Dear friends, I am grateful for the invitation to share with you some thoughts on the soul-stirring subject of the emergence of a society shaped by the divine teachings. Discussing this topic in Canada, a country that has already made important contributions to the progress of the cause of God and to the advancement of humanity, and it is destined to do more in the decades and centuries to come, is a pleasure. Abdu'l-Baha visited Canada in 1912. The significance of the words he uttered while in Canada is these days becoming more and more apparent. Anyone would do well to reflect on what he talked about when he was in Montreal and to consider what the journalists who listened to him reported in the media. On 5th of September 1912, the Montreal Daily Star newspaper reported that during one of his talks, Abdu'l-Baha explained that establishing a society based on the oneness of humankind is the central aim of the Baha'i faith, and invited the audience to strive for the realization of this important principle. Within that context, he invited, saying, "Let us bring the kingdom, the earthly paradise, out of the potential and into the real." Shouldn't we take pride as Canadians that it was in this country that Abdu'l-Baha invited the inhabitants of a cluster, in our current terminology, to work together to build the kingdom, to build a society based on the teachings of Baha'u'llah? When he was preparing to leave Canada, he told the Baha'is who were present at his departure, "I have sown the seeds, you must water it." That watering has been so effective that today the Universal House of Justice, in its message dated 30th of December 2021 to the Continental Councillors, invites the Baha'is all over the world to work with their neighbors, friends, co-workers, relatives, and other inhabitants of their clusters towards the emergence of a society based on the divine teachings, a task which is in fact nothing other than building the kingdom of God on earth. Two of the recent messages of the House of Justice give us our marching orders. In its Rizwan 2021 message, the House of Justice assisted the Friends to see the progress made during the past 25 years, whereby the Baha'i world, in the words of the House of Justice, underwent a transformation that endowed it with an undreamed of capacity to learn, to grow, and to serve humanity. Inspired by this message, you should consider the progress made in your own cluster during the past 25 years. This exercise will no doubt act as a source of encouragement and will also give you hope and confidence for the prospect of yet much greater achievements. The letter of the House of Justice, dated 30th of December 2021, addressed to the Continental Councillors, outlines what we would all be engaged in during the next 25 years. Never mind how old some of us would be at the end of these 25 years. It announces a new series of plans focused on a single aim: the release of the society-building power of the faith in ever greater measures. How privileged we are to live in the day when learning how to establish the kingdom of God on earth, learning how to contribute to the emergence of a society shaped by the divine teachings, has finally arrived. The message is a masterpiece of love, encouragement, and empowerment to the Friends the world over. It is a symphony in which a worldwide community that has just marked a stunning 25 years of progress is given direction for the next 25 years and a framework for action over the next 9 years. It gives a vision that should inspire us all and maps out the path we are all to walk, while of course acknowledges that we are at different points along this path. It provides for all the 6,000 clusters in which a program of growth is being established, clusters with very diverse circumstances and at different stages of development to move forward. In short, the message describes the mighty spiritual enterprise in which the people of Baha'i all over the world are engaged, and is rich with examples of success and possibilities in clusters at various stages in their development. Our task is to understand the guidance, consider its implications for individuals, institutions, communities, and indeed for our own cluster, and then, alive to the significance of the day and to the significance of our activities, arise and strive for the emergence of this society. Relating the contents of each paragraph to the conditions of our own cluster, we will see that in some of the paragraphs, the guidance is exactly what we need to focus on at this time, while in other paragraphs, we are given a vision of where our cluster will be after the process of community building has further advanced. As you try to apply the guidance to your own clusters, you will most likely discern that in your cluster, a greater expression of the society building power of the faith requires, first and foremost, still further advances in the process of entry by troops. Careful study of the message will also reveal that what you will be doing in the next 25 years to further advance the process of entry by troops will not be precisely the same as before, as a shift is implied in the message of the Universal House of Justice. I will share a few thoughts about this shift. This shift is not so much in what we should be doing, but in how we should do it. I have personally noted at least 8 features of the 9-year plan that, in my estimation, are elements of this shift, and I believe that every cluster would do well to reflect on them and to ensure that a clear and a systematic response is made to each of these features. I will mention first all of the 8, but we'll talk about only a few of them as time permits. So first, the concept of reading the reality of the cluster, identifying what needs to be done next, and make a path to achieve it. Second, the concept of measurable outcomes for progress in 2 aspects of the plan: diffusing the light of Baha'u'llah's revelation ever more widely, and extending the roots of his faith ever more deeply into the soil of society, and how the Institute remains the invariable instrument for achieving these outcomes, inviting us to have an expanded vision of the Institute. Third is the emphasis on outward looking. Fourth, the advice that friends reflect periodically on effective ways of teaching the faith in their surroundings and to fan within the hearts a passion for teaching. Fifth is strengthening the process of learning within each cluster. Sixth, what the House of Justice refers to as dissemination of information. Seventh, the role youth have to continue to play in a more decisive manner. And 8, the skills of having a sense of focus that allow many lines of action to advance without being in competition with each other. So let me begin by sharing a few words about the first point. In paragraph 15 of the message, the House of Justice asked the friends serving at the grassroots everywhere to read their own reality and ask themselves what, in light of the possibilities and requirements at hand, would be fitting objectives to pursue in the coming cycle or series of cycles. It then goes on to say much can be learned from the experience of the friends in similar clusters. For a community that is a step further along the same path can provide valuable insights about the goal to strive for next. And at the end of that paragraph, it adds, as the friends ponder what is before them, they will readily see that for every community there is a goal in reach, and for every goal a path to reach it. All of this, friends, tell me that developing the capacity to set fitting goals, that is, realistic goals constituting the next step in the development of a cluster, to be achieved in a given period, in one cycle or in few cycles, in a year or so, and drawing a path to achieve it may well be one of the shifts we should make. The achievability of a goal within a given time frame will require the community to have a path to achieve it. What is a path to achieve a goal? Can a well-designed plan be a path? An effective plan usually identifies the strategy or the strategies intended to be used for achieving the goal. The implementation of a strategy becomes greatly facilitated when, at the start, lines of action constituting that strategy are set out in details, and each line of action is further clarified by a plan of action. And there are those who would go one step further in planning and make for each plan of action a list of actual activities with details such as what the activity will be, when it will occur, who will be involved in it, and how it will be undertaken. While everything is, of course, subject to modifications through the rhythm of action and reflection, the mere detailed planning for the achievement of each goal at the beginning and the sharing of information with the community are effective ways to assist those involved in the implementation to achieve unity of thought and action for the tasks at hand and for the necessary follow-up, of course. In addition, this will make it easier for a larger number of friends to identify those lines of actions in which they can participate. In the process of goal setting, it will be useful to ponder how the cluster will respond to all the aspects of the 9-year plan. Take, for instance, the guidance that the essentially spiritual undertakings of diffusing the light of Baha'u'llah's revelation ever more widely and extending the roots of his faith ever more deeply into the soil of society, each have measurable outcomes. What does diffusing the light of Baha'u'llah's revelation mean, and how is this measured at the level of the cluster? What does extending the roots of the faith ever more deeper into the soil of society mean, and how to assess it within the cluster? What are some fitting goals with measurable outcomes for each of these undertakings? An outward-looking orientation, friends, is another feature of the plan implying a shift. This requirement has been always emphasized by the House of Justice, but its inevitability at this time can be felt in the guidance in paragraph 19 of the message, which says, "The release of the society-building power of the faith at the grassroots is a capacity that comes into greater demand as closer association and cooperation with the inhabitants of the cluster population becomes a reality." The House of Justice then describes outward looking as follows: "Finding ways to continually share the fruits of a thriving pattern of action with souls who are as yet unfamiliar with the faith." Can we not conclude that the release of the society-building power of the faith requires our embracing a way of life that is characterized by being outward-looking? What are the implications of this guidance for each one of the three protagonists? Vida and I, my wife Vida and I, living in one of the neighborhoods of Dundas, have come to understand it this way. Community building efforts should be eventually established in every neighborhood of every cluster. Every cluster should therefore have a plan for this gradual but constant progression. Whatever the receptivity of the neighborhood we live in, we have the obligation to strive to contribute to the implementation of the divine plan. We therefore either have to move to a more receptive neighborhood of our choice, or engage in learning how to be the agent of change and spiritual transformation of the society in the neighborhood where we are. We realize that whatever the level of receptivity of our neighbors, we need to act with full confidence that they, those still unaware of the message of Baha'u'llah, have the capacity to be the protagonists of their own and their society's spiritual transformations. And finally, we reminded ourselves that we should indeed strive to do this even if we doubt our own abilities, since we have total confidence in the ultimate success of a learning process guided by the Universal House of Justice. With this understanding, we saw it as our responsibility to learn how to establish friendship, which is the first step for accompanying our neighbors on their spiritual journey. We concluded that lack of interest by the neighbors in close association with the newcomers is not a response from their souls, but rather a reaction derived from the culture dominant among them. And every culture is there to change. We remembered the emphasis that Abdul Baha, Shoghi Effendi, and the House of Justice make that Baha'is are the leaven of the world and should act as leaven. One of the requirements of an effective leaven is that of blending with what is intended to be transformed. For the Baha'is, involvement in the life of society, an association and friendship with neighbors is analogous to the mixing of yeast, which is leaven, with flour and water. When the yeast is well mixed and the temperature reaches the right level, the dough has no choice but to rise and become ready to be baked into bread. With us acting as the yeast and the greater plan of God getting the temperature to the right level, the world will turn into a wonderfully leavened dough and will be baked in the oven of hardships. And as the transformation of society comes about at the appropriate time, the desired bread will be ready. We concluded that all of us, indeed, have the obligation as individuals and families to learn how to become outward-looking. We must allow this outward-looking orientation to further influence our pattern of activity. Nay, we must allow it to shape our social life. In the context of being outward-looking, we will come to better appreciate the significance of the capacity that the Baha'i community has gained over the past 25 years to open the doors of our activities to all and to welcome large numbers of people to our celebrations. The Canadian Baha'i community can take pride in having demonstrated the capacity to extend invitations to over 100,000 souls and to welcome the participations of at least 30,000 to the twin bicentenary celebrations. 2 years later, according to statistics from the Baha'i National Center, the number of regular participants in core activities across Canada is nearly 30,000. Given this proven experience, friends, can we not confidently aim at soon welcoming 50,000 or more to our core activities? It is with this vision in mind and following the guidance of the Universal House of Justice that our National Spiritual Assembly, working with the 6 regional Baha'i councils and of course in close collaboration with the councillors, is planning for a number of conferences. These gatherings are part of a series of global conferences called by the Universal House of Justice, will take place across the world in diverse settings. They are being held to explore the inherent oneness of humanity, to better understand the nature of a universal call to work together for the betterment of the world and for the emergence of a society shaped by the divine teachings. The program aims to assist the participants to explore questions such as what is the common ground needed on which to build our communities together? How do we build a unified vision for our area, for our neighborhood, amongst diverse beliefs and backgrounds? What human characteristics and values are building blocks for a stable social order? How do we navigate a pathway to decision making through inclusivity, understanding, and detachment? How is our understanding of the inherent oneness of humanity a means for social progress? As to the question of who can be invited to these conferences, I would say anyone who you think would be interested in attending can be invited. Remember, Abdul Baha says, every community in the world findeth in these divine teachings the realization of its highest aspiration. So people from all backgrounds, cultures, religions, and ages are warmly invited. You can think particularly of all the Baha'is, whether active in the core activities or not, all your neighbors, co-workers, relatives, and friends who participate in the activities, all those who come to the Holy Day celebrations and attend firesides. Families are especially welcome. In addition to the main program, sessions will be offered for children and junior youth at the same time. Many more souls who associate with the Baha'is and are one way or another directly or indirectly connected to the community, and well-wishers of any well-wishers of mankind can attend. Remember that only a percentage of the total number you invite will attend these conferences, and only a percentage of those who attend will come to the core activities, firesides, and other Baha'i gatherings. One can then say the more attendees in these conferences, the more likely the number of regular participants from the wider society in your community building efforts. In relation to having an outward-looking orientation, I should mention one other point, namely the necessity to learn how to talk about the nature of what the Baha'is are doing in a language and a tone that those yet unfamiliar with the message of Baha'u'llah will find it easier to participate in this great enterprise. You may find paragraph 4 of the message of the House of Justice dated 30th of December inspiring for this purpose. In a gathering of some university professors in Montreal, Abdul Baha told them that Baha'is are trying to restore the unity of the human world and to eradicate all prejudices from the surface of the earth. He then asked them, "Don't you want the world to find true unity and be freed from prejudice and relieved of war and conflict? Do you not want to do this?" We need, friends, to learn the language to speak to our friends and neighbors. In the same token, we need to learn how to talk about the training institute and the courses it offers so as to encourage the inhabitants of a cluster to participate. With an outward-looking orientation, the centrality of the teaching work becomes more evident. The Universal House of Justice says that the accomplishment of the previous series of plans could not have occurred without a tremendous advance in the teaching work. It invites us to reflect on effective ways of teaching the faith in our surroundings and to fan within our hearts a passion for teaching. It would surely be a befitting response, in my opinion, if every cluster, while encouraging all the believers to do so, were to assign a few friends who already are blessed with a passion for teaching, to each develop an individual teaching plan for themselves, to teach the faith regularly, and to get together to reflect on effective ways of teaching the faith in their cluster. The learning and the experience gained through these endeavors of these few friends will enable the area teaching committee and other cluster agencies to gain insights into the most effective ways of teaching in the cluster and to guide and support the teaching efforts of an increasing number of friends. Beloved friends, we know that all services to promote the divine plan are praiseworthy. But according to Abdul Baha, teaching the cause is the head cornerstone of the foundation itself. God has prescribed unto everyone the duty of teaching his cause, is Baha'u'llah's words. If at times the task of teaching seems daunting, let us derive confidence from the fact that each human soul is at its very core already endowed with the capacity to recognize the manifestation of God for this age. As you know, there are various ways of carrying out teaching activities. The holding of regular devotional gatherings is teaching the cause, as this activity helps to provide an environment that encourages people to study Baha'u'llah's message. It is worthy of every family in the cluster, in each cluster, whether the Baha'is or those attracted to the vision of Baha'u'llah, to hold at least one such gathering and learn how to invite the participations of neighbors, colleagues, friends, and others who are as yet unfamiliar with the teachings of Baha'u'llah. Having ongoing children's classes and forming junior youth groups likewise constitute teaching the cause. These activities not only enable the younger generation to learn how to build their capacities by drawing on the influence of divine teachings, but also provide opportunities for the parents in a neighborhood to collectively examine the ways the words of God can help their offspring to shape their lives so as to be useful members of society. The formation of study circles is teaching the cause. It is in such gatherings that individuals succeed in enhancing their capacities for service in the light of their reflection on the Baha'i writings. Such people not only teach the cause themselves, but help train teachers of the cause. Having a fireside is teaching the cause, since hospitality offered in a loving atmosphere at home, combined with respect for the beliefs of others, create an environment conducive to learning about the faith. Association with the inhabitants of the cluster establishes friendships that then lead to the holding of regular, friendly get-togethers to exchange views on spiritual themes and social issues, ultimately familiarizing those interested in the message of Baha'u'llah. This clearly constitutes teaching the cause. Pioneering, whether internationally or on the home front within Canada or within the sub-region or even within your own cluster, with the purpose of contributing to the fulfillment of the goals of the plan, this too is teaching the cause. Any other effort to assist seekers in the study of the faith likewise is teaching the cause. All such initiatives are needed. Each one of us is obliged to strive to teach the cause one way or another. Universal participation in serving the divine plan is crucial. The House of Justice, in a letter dated September 1964, and in reference to the Baha'i community, says, "In this organic, divinely guided, blessed, and illumined body," the Baha'i community, "the participation of every believer is of utmost importance, and it is a source of power and vitality as yet unknown to us." Here is another important point about teaching the cause. The Universal House of Justice has repeatedly stated that it does not matter if a person's heart is illumined with the light of faith in Baha'u'llah through a devotional meeting, one of the courses of the Training Institute, or by elevated conversations and attending a fireside. What is of particular importance, however, the House of Justice says, is that a percentage of the new believers go through the courses of the Training Institute, thereby enhancing their capacities and gaining certain practical experience for service. One of the several reasons for this important strategy is given in paragraph 9 of the December 30th message. With the capacities acquired through the participation in the courses of the training institutes, the House of Justice says, "The pattern of activity unfolding at the grassroots opens up a variety of settings in which receptive souls, sometimes whole families or peer groups, can take part in meaningful conversations which awaken interest in the vision of the faith and the person of Baha'u'llah." This phenomenon takes on much larger significance when we see that nowadays in some parts of the world, such as in the Western countries, on one hand, people appreciate the teachings and the principles of the faith. However, appreciating the teachings on their own, while certainly laudable, does not seem to stimulate a sufficiently large number of people to enter the faith. On the other hand, experience shows that in light of the acceleration of social disintegration, through our efforts to introduce a pattern of vibrant community life characterized by diversity, unity, and imbued with the spiritual joy of participation in service to one's fellow human, as stated in the Rizwan 2021 message, large numbers of people could find the faith, become familiar with it, identify with its aim, join in its activities and deliberations, and in many cases, embrace it. This particular phenomenon, alongside other possibilities offered by the Training Institute, render the Institute as a potent means, the words of the House of Justice, a potent means for the society-building power of the faith to find release. Accordingly, friends, striving to understand and develop a love for the Institute is our individual responsibility. Striving to support and strengthen the Training Institute and the Institute process is an obligation, becomes an obligation for every devoted follower of Baha'u'llah. There is no time to address the other features of the plan that influence the shift that must characterize our approach to the community work during the 9-year plan. But all are of vital importance, whether it is preparing for the role of the youth, or it is strengthening the process of learning, ensuring the disseminations of information, the practical means of having a sense of focus that has to accommodate many lines of action, all of which must advance without being in competition. Each one should be approached in every cluster in a step-by-step way, and a practical goal and a path or a plan to achieving it be made. I would like to end my remarks by sharing a few points about the verb strive in the last sentence of paragraph 2 of the message of the House of Justice. In the dictionary, to strive is defined as to exert oneself vigorously, to struggle vigorously, and to make strenuous efforts for achieving a goal. The Supreme Body states how immensely blessed are those souls who, alive to the greatness of this day and the significance of their actions, strive for the emergence of a society shaped by the divine teachings. The Baha'i community of Canada has played an important role in strengthening the cause of God throughout the world. The current accelerations of the progress of the faith within Canada is also most heartwarming. The 9-year plan calls for yet greater diffusion of the light of Baha'u'llah's revelation and a deeper extension of the roots of the cause into the soil of Canadian society. Given the stellar accomplishments of the community in the past, this is a very doable objective. As individual believers, we have great responsibility to get this goal achieved. In Canada, we have every freedom we need to serve the cause. We have loving, capable Baha'i institutions to guide and support our endeavors. The community is blessed with a spirit of sacrificial service to the faith, including contributions towards the material needs of the faith. The heart desire of the majority of the people in Canada is to have a harmonious cooperative society. With the amazing diversity of the population in most parts of Canada, the ground is fertile for the emergence of a diverse and united society shaped by divine teachings. As Baha'is, not only do we have the responsibility to bring the revelation to the attention of our fellow citizens, but we are also in a unique position to serve the people, to achieve the desire of their hearts. The key is to make the teaching work, the community building activities, the focus of our individual daily lives, and to strive to achieve the goals of the 9-year plan. Every follower of Baha'u'llah in this country, in this blessed country, wishes to exactly do that. The main challenge I see, based on my personal observation, is the limitations of the adequate quality time dedicated to direct service for all of us. More individuals and more time are needed to ensure the uninterrupted advancement of the process in every cluster. Surely the most effective solution is to significantly increase the number of human resources of the faith. The sustainable way to do this is to teach the cause, work diligently to strengthen the training institute, and raise an ever-increasing number of human resources by facilitating larger numbers from among the inhabitants of the cluster to participate in the institute courses. But to get to such a stage, more time and more resources are needed from all of us, from within the community, to ensure that the institute process in every cluster ascends to a higher level of effectiveness. The goals of the 9-year plan are designed to do exactly that. So what is then the challenge? I don't know, but what if our lives are invariably influenced by the assumptions prevalent in the society we live in? The dominant culture says rest and recreation are very important. However, Abdul Baha, our perfect exemplar, advises us not to rest for a moment. The beloved Master praises hard work and hardship in the path of service to the cause, seeing it as a source of true joy, and encourages us to follow him in this path. The prevalent culture endorses the pursuit of what benefits us personally. The prevalent culture promotes wealth as the main contributor to a happy life. For us, wealth and income are necessities that enable us to live a life of service to the faith and to mankind. Many of the early believers in North America had to sacrificially rearrange their social and economic lives so as to arise to serve the needs of the faith at that time. Following in their footsteps, each one of us would do well to re-examine the assumptions of the current society, review our ways of life, and see if we can increase the amount of time available to serve the needs of the faith at this time. We can ask ourselves questions which only we ourselves can answer. Do I see myself as a full-time servant of the cause of Baha'u'llah and see everything I do, whether professional, earning an income, family responsibilities, etc., all as part of a coherent life of service? Or am I a full-time worker in the society who is able to give part-time attention to the teaching and community building works? Do I need to continue working 8 to 12 hours a day to earn an income? Or am I in a position to reduce work and find more hours for service to the divine plan? Am I in a situation where I can take leave for a few years, for a year, or even a few months and serve the faith full time? Am I in a position to settle in a pioneering post for a period of time to meet the needs of the plan? What else should I and can I do before I can say I am striving to serve Baha'u'llah. Dear friends, we live in historic time. The 9-year plan is a historic plan. The House of Justice describes it as the first major undertaking in a sacred 25-year venture, generational in its scope and significance, that will make demands of the individual believer, the community, and the institutions reminiscent of the demands that the Guardian made of the Baha'i world at the outset of the 10-year crusade. The House of Justice then gives us this assurance that if, by the grace of Almighty God, the Friends should succeed in reaching the heights of heroism to which they are now summoned, history will assuredly pay tribute to their actions in terms no less glowing than those with which it honors the glorious deeds that decorate the annals of the first century of the formative age. The world is in turmoil and it's fast deteriorating. The decades ahead are set to bring with them challenges among the most daunting that the human family has ever had to face. People do not know where to turn for the answers to many of their questions and concerns. The preoccupations of many remain materialistic in nature. We who are the servants of the Blessed Beauty, with a rich legacy of sacrificial service to the cause, have a clear path to walk. Looking ahead on this path, as advised by the House of Justice, might we not perceive Baha'u'llah himself, the reins of humanity's affairs in one hand, his other beckoning all to hasten? We have the bounty of being the recipient of ongoing guidance from the Universal House of Justice, an institution created by Baha'u'llah as the last refuge of a tottering civilization. The task before us is one of great consequence for the very future of humanity. Our immediate responsibilities are clear. The Universal House of Justice, in its message of 25th November 2020 addressed to the believers worldwide, clearly states it by telling us, recommit your energies, keep your focus on the mission immediately before you. Beloved friends, it was a pleasure to spend some time with you, and thank you for your patience and for your listening. Allahu Akbar.